Okay, greetings everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. We're going to be going over some more information of my research here shortly. So I want to take the time to welcome everybody. I appreciate your support. So in the meantime, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. If you're on Keith Little, El Perro, or Hecklebus, get on over to the other channels and do the same. There's PayPal links down below for anybody who wants to share some love. And of course, the StreamYard link is pinned for anybody who wants to come on and join the panel. I guess it's not pinned yet, but it's down there for anybody who wants to join. And what we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to do a kind of a travel through about the identification stuff in certain elements about it. And we're going to start out with the data elements, because everything that we're dealing with in this public service is a matter of contracts, but they all operate under public trust. And every time you sign a document, what's happening in the background is there's a transfer of the insurance underwriting risk, and that's put on you. So we're going to review some information here. And we're going to start out with 19 CFR 149.3 data elements. And it comes from Customs Duties, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Department of Homeland Security, Department of the Treasurer. Importer security filing. And so what happens at the hospital when mom goes in and pays for the services that are being sold, we're in the seller, name and address of the last known entity by whom the goods are sold or agreed to be sold. If the goods are to be imported otherwise than in pursuance of a purchase, the name and address of the owner of the goods must be provided. If the goods are to be imported otherwise than in the pursuance of a purchase, the name and address of the owner of the goods must be provided. A widely recognized commercially accepted identification number for this party may be provided in lieu of the name and address. Guess what? The buyer, name and address of the last known entity to whom the goods are sold or agreed to be sold. If the goods are to be imported otherwise than in pursuance of a purchase, the name and address of the owner of the goods must be provided. A widely recognized commercially accepted identification number for this party may be provided in lieu of the name and address. So if you're buying and selling, why are you giving a name and address when there's a way to give, or an option to give, a number in lieu of? And what is the effect of that option? Remember, I told you, or read right off from the site, 20 CFR 422.103 says the individual's name and number identify the record. What do you suppose that number is? You suppose it's commercially identifiable? A widely recognized commercially accepted identification number. The Social Security number is on a card. And a credit card is any card, plate, or device used to obtain money, property, services, or labor on credit. Importer of record number, foreign trade zone applicant identification number. See, when you Do the enumeration at birth. That's an application to enter into a foreign trade zone. Foreign trade zone applicant identification number. Federal zone. Foreign trade zone. No person shall reside within the zone except federal, state, or municipal officers whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. Now that's going to play into part in the education system here in a few. We're going to be talking about that after we talk about some financial stuff. Internal Revenue Service IRS number, employer identification number, social security number, or CBP assigned number of the entity liable for payment of all duties, assigned number of the entity liable for payment of all duties, and responsible for meeting all statutory and regulatory requirements incurred as a result of importation. So they're saying they took upon a incurring of a debt of duties and responsibilities for the statutory regulatory requirements upon that importation. Who is the entity liable for that payment? United States government. Those Federal Reserve notes say it's legal tender for all debts, public and private. All debts, public and private, are related to 18 U.S.C. 8, obligations and other securities of the United States, and they are secured through the foreign trade zone, 18 U.S.C. 7, special maritime territorial jurisdiction. And they are specifically for United States vessels, 18 U.S.C. 9, federal, state, or municipal officers or agents. Incurred as a result of importation. Oops, what happened there? Well, I'll be damned. Let me open up a new one. I don't know how that window ended up like that. Now I can't read it. Okay. For goods intended to be delivered to a foreign trade zone, the IRS number, EIN, SSN, or CBP assigned number of the party filing the FTZ documentation with CBP must be provided. Since we're talking about the establishment of a state vital statistics jurisdiction, which is exclusive to the individual when they're born, that would be a custom documentation. And that is what they're doing. See, that social security number is assigned to the individual. The individual is a legal name, which is a translation of the given name and the family name provided on certain documentation. Ship to party. This is the important part to remember, folks. As a party to the trust, you do not necessarily have to be party to the contracts. As a party to the trust, you can be the benefactor. In fact, what you should be, unless you have automatically, somehow, magically, unicorn, rainbowed, some kind of distinction that you are, in fact, a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board and has never been before that board to apply. Name and address of the first deliver to party scheduled to physically receive the goods after the goods have been released from customs custody A widely recognized, commercially accepted identification number for this party may be provided in lieu of the name and address. Think about this stuff, folks. They're giving you different options that you could be using. And if you don't know them, then you're not going to use them. I'm only putting them out there to show you what they say in plain language. And reason and logic says that if you're operating in a trust, then there are 3 positions. But if they're playing you as a trustee and charging you, making you liable, there's something else going on there. So you must be a contractor in that. Again, like I said, the use of the name and address is implying that you are such a contract agent, using that residence as a principal place of business. Yet you've never been once paid for conducting such business at that home. And that is why the tax assessor is qualifying you as a taxpayer. That Social Security number is a taxpayer identification number. Guess what the number on the back of it is? Guess what the number on the back of that Social Security card is? That's a widely recognized commercial identification number that can be used on credit. On credit. It's the credit side, not the debit side. It's the private side, not the public side. 17 CFR 210.5-02 balance sheets. And we're talking about 17. Title 17 is Commodity and Securities Exchanges. Securities and Exchange Commission. Part 210, Form and Content of and Requirements for Financial Statements. Securities Act of 1933. Securities Exchange Act of 1934. Investment Company Act of 1940. Investment Advisors Act of 1940. And Energy Policy and Conservation Act of 1975. Do you guys remember Enron? And various other scandals just like that. It was brought up in conversation today, and that's exactly what we're talking about. Commercial and industrial companies' balance sheets. The purpose of this rule is to indicate the various line items and certain additional disclosures, if applicable. So there are things that need to be disclosed that are not on the face of the balance sheet, but are most certainly applicable to correcting the record. And except as otherwise permitted by the commission, should appear on the face of the balance sheets or related notes. Notes filed for the person to whom the article pertains, for the person to whom the person pertains. So somebody filed notes. It's a promise if it's a note. So somebody filed promises for the person to whom this article pertains. The person is the individual. The individual's name and number identify the record. Therefore, the individual is the record. It can never be you. You are not the individual. The individual is a record exclusive to the name and number that identifies it. It is a statistical jurisdiction only. Assets and other debits. Current assets when appropriate, cash and cash items. Those documents, those applications, those registrations and all that. Those are all cash items. They're negotiable instruments. Legal tender, Separate disclosure shall be made of the cash and cash items which are restricted as to withdrawal or usage. You cannot take those such papers and use them as money in those forms. They have to be converted. Therefore, they are already restricted, much like the the disbursement postal money orders are restricted. They are not negotiable. These such documents are negotiable, but they hold different restrictions. The provisions of any restrictions shall be described in a note to the financial statements. The provisions of any restrictions shall be described in a note to the financial statement. Was mom and dad given disclosure of these restrictions, or were they just attached to some financial statements that somebody else made? And this is particular because in order for that thing to be properly certified, it has to have a handwritten statement of intent of the person giving the asset or other debit or credit. You can't just assume that they're giving it without no statement of intent. This is the fraud. Restrictions may include legally restricted deposits held as compensating balances against short-term borrowing arrangements, contracts entered into with others, or company statements of intention with regard to particular deposits. See, the company has statements of their intention with regard to particular deposits, but they don't have a matching statement of intent from a mom or a dad stating their intent of making that deposit. See, the company doesn't make the deposit. They receive the deposit. It is deposited with them. However, time deposits and short-term certificates of deposit are not generally included in legally restricted deposits. In cases where compensating balance arrangements exist but are not agreements which legally restrict the use of cash amounts shown on the balance sheet, describe in the notes to the financial statement these arrangements and the amount involved, if determinable, for the most recent audit balance sheet required and for any subsequent unaudited balance sheet required in the notes to the financial statements. Compensating balances that are maintained under an agreement to assure future credit availability shall be disclosed in the notes to the financial statements along with the amount and such terms of agreement. So we see that somewhere along the line, someone has not realized where the credit extends from because there is no statement of intent as to where it comes from to begin with. Real quick, I want to take a moment to remind everybody to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Get this information out there. I certainly appreciate everybody's support. So please help out on that. And we're going to get on to the next one. And 34. Title 34 is education. Regulations of the offices of the Department of Education, Office of Post-Secondary Education, Department of Education, Student Assistance General Provisions, Standards for Participation in Title IV and Higher Education Assistance Programs, Compliance Audits and Audited Financial Statements. Now, the standards for participation in Title IV, which is your Medicaid services and higher education assistance programs, is again that thing about the selective service I mentioned a few nights ago. And you can go visit that video, selective service and what it means, here on my YouTube channel. and it will be in the regular video section. And it was not a live video, as we do here on StreamYard. But you can go take a look at that, and it shows the sources and everything right from their codes. It tells about how the guy that's taking on as a male student further Title IV and higher education assistance programs as a benefit, he is then required to sign up for selective service. If he does not take upon that option and decides to drop out of school, then he does not have to sign up for selective service. Okay? It's part of the process. That high school education is a benefit, yet somehow it's paid for by taxes. Well, that benefit is not to the kid, it's to the mom, or is to the kid and not mom and dad. They're paying for it. And this is how the system do. If that kid doesn't want to go to school anymore, then why would you want to pay for it? But no, mom and dad want to pay for that public education through their taxes, and then the school district enforces that kid's got to go to school. You got to have a good education so you can operate in this world, right? Right? I don't know if Jesus was taught reading, writing, and arithmetic as we know it today. I'm sure he knew the word. I'm sure he memorized it, but whether he read it or not, I don't know. That isn't discussed. Anyway, let's get on with the compliance audits and audited financial statements. Independent auditor. For purposes of this section, the term independent auditor refers to an independent certified public accountant or a government auditor. To conduct an audit under this section, a government auditor must meet the government auditing standards, qualification, and independence standards, including standards related to organized or organizational independence. Institutions. An institution that participates in any Title IV or higher education assistance program must at least annually have an independent auditor conduct a compliance audit of its administration of that program and an audit of the institution's general purpose financial statements. So mom and dad, when your children turn 14 and you've got one of them male students, I urge you to make sure that they're complying with this and that there's a financial statement of intent from you. That in their giving of that education, the ultimate authority comes from you and not some parental local or governmental local parentis because they have some kind of public service contract. Because that public service contract is to serve the benefactor. I urge you to learn how to stand up and act as the benefactor for your children. Otherwise, they're going to be duped into this just like my parents were duped into it. I didn't find out about this until long after I was out of high school. Had I known this before, I might have chosen a different path for education. I might even have gone on to college at that point and said, fuck high school. They were already sending me to calculus and trigonometry. That right there told me I should have been in college. And then I had to listen to my mom and dad hard for the rest of my life. Keith, you really should go to college, after I understood what the education system was actually doing to people. So no thanks. I don't want that public education system. I don't want the college that indoctrinates people. I want true knowledge. Not remember this, remember that, remember this, remember that. I want to be able to use my intuition, my instincts, and my thought processes. Third-party servicers, except as provided under this part or 34 CFR Part 682, with regard to complying with the provisions under this section, a third-party servicer must follow the procedures contained in the audit guides developed by and available from the Department of Education's Office of Inspector General. A third-party servicer is defined under 668.2. Got submission deadline, audit submission requirements, compliance audits for institutions, compliance audits for third-party servicers, audited financial statements, Determination of liabilities. Based on the audit finding and the institution's or third-party services response, the Secretary determines the amount of liability, if any, owed by the institution or servicer and instructs the institution or servicer as the manner of the repayment. Notice that's repayment. Just like we spoke yesterday, you paid for something and now there's a repayment. That's redemption. You paid for it, now you're buying it back. Or you sold it, somebody else bought it, so now you're buying it back. If the Secretary determines that a third-party servicer owes a liability for its administration of an institution's Title IV and higher education assistance programs, the servicer must notify each institution under whose contract the servicer owes a liability of that determination. The servicer must also notify every institution that contracts with the servicer for the same service that the Secretary determined that a liability was owed. So, folks that owe child support, alimony, things like that, those are Title 4D contracts, and they are saying that you are a party to the contract. Again, I urge you to step up and tell them, no, I am not a party to the contract because I am not a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence is deemed necessary as a contract officer, giving a name and address for such service contracts, for process of service of such contracts. I am not qualified. I am the benefactor. No such determination was ever made. I have never sat down with the Secretary of Commerce as the executive chair and the Secretary of Treasury to make application. It must be deemed necessary. It cannot be voluntary. Repayments. An institution or third-party servicer must repay funds under the procedures in this section shall repay those funds at the direction of the Secretary within 45 days of the date of the Secretary's notification, unless the institution or servicer files an appeal under the procedures established in subpart H of this part. The Secretary permits a longer payment period. Notwithstanding paragraphs F and G1 of this section, if an institution or third-party servicer has posted surety, if an institution or third-party servicer has posted surety, one more time, if an institution or third-party servicer has posted surety. So when you get arrested and you go down and you post that surety bond, you're considered a third-party servicer and you're providing personal services. You're providing personal services under a lease to do the paperwork. This is why I did not sign, upon being let out of jail, the release paperwork. Every time you sign an instrument, you become a third-party servicer, and they transfer the insurance underwriting risk to you as if though you are a contract agent capable of making those such contracts. Or has provided a third-party guarantee. Signature guarantee. Medallion stamp signature guarantee. It's called a signature guarantee for a reason. And that's what you're doing every time you sign. You're giving a guarantee. Look at that traffic citation. It says you promise to appear by giving your signature. That's a guarantee. And the Secretary questions expenditures or compliance with applicable requirements and identifies liabilities, then the Secretary may determine that deferring recourse to the surety or guarantee is not appropriate because the need to provide relief to students or borrowers affected by the act or omission giving rise to the liability outweighs the importance of deferring collection action until completion of available appeal or proceedings. With 93 cases to help sustain the state's budget, 94 actually, 94 cases, and to help sustain the state's budget, the importance of the liability outweighs the importance of deferring collection of those 93 cases. Because all 94 cases, because all 94 cases will show that there was a very definitive conversion of the last name, which is styled as a legal name, as part of the legal name that I've been taught to give in every situation, Keith Little. And someone took that name and converted it to a different type, different style, and called it a firm name. And this is why I say it's probably being presumed as an investment firm conducting business as a third-party servicer. That's a pretty long stretch for a presumption. The terms of the surety or guarantee do not provide complete assurance that recourse to that protection will be fully available through the completion of available appeal proceedings, or the secretary may use administrative offset. Remember, I spoke about Enron. Do you suppose that they just bailed them out, or do you suppose to sustain the budget? They again just did an administrative offset and wrote it off and said, don't come back to our playground anymore, and forced them through bankruptcy to sell off all of their stuff. Pursuant to 34 CFR Part 30 to collect the funds owed under the procedures of this section. Audit submission requirements for foreign institutions. What about foreign parties? See if there's anything else here. Incorporation by reference. There it is. Incorporation by reference. The material listed in this paragraph I is incorporated by reference into this section with the approval of the Director of the Federal Register under 5 U.S.C. 552A. What is 5 U.S.C. 552A, folks? That is Public Information Agency rules, opinions, orders, records, and proceedings under 5 U.S.C. 552. Each agency shall make available to the public information as follows. But let's look at 5 U.S.C. 552A. And that's those records maintained on individuals. Just a comparison. It's not the same thing, but it's a comparison I wanted to show you. And 1 CFR Part 51. This incorporation by reference, IBR material, incorporation by reference, is available for inspection at U.S. Department of Education and National Archives Records Administration. Okay? That enumeration at birth is an import document, and it's got a burial trust established. And then when you fill out the SS5 form, it establishes a spendthrift trust, and then you start operating by use of that address as a contract agent by presumption, undertaking the insurance risks, and goodness gracious, all of that upon your death. The death certificate gets entered into the National Archives, and it all starts with the U.S. Department of Education when they first start using your name in the public, in school. See, those medical records are private, but when you go to school, when you start sending your kid to public school, now you're making him a public issue. Okay? I urge you to stop. I urge you to stop. The next one is, of course, 34 U.S. Code 40316 National Crime Prevention and Privacy Compact. This is what we're talking about. If you're going to have your children in that public education, you better make sure that they know that your child is going to be protected under this. None of that information is going to become public. You send your children to school with a nickname. He gets a nickname. They do not read out the legal name, Keith Little, in a fucking public school. The exact place that they teach you how to write that legal name and don't tell you the difference between the given name, family name, and the legal name. Real quick, I want to say hi to everybody. Hard Hat, Brielle, Bon Ivers, Dominic, greetings. Ranchella, Freedom Fighter, Travis, excuse me. Anybody else out there? Appreciate your support. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. I'm going to drop the stream link in case anybody wants to join the panel. And then we're going to go on to the next one. And the reason I say that about the public education system is because of what's known as the Interstate Identification Index. Now, under the Interstate Identification Index, we have the Privacy Act statement. This is the privacy protected. Privacy Act statement, guiding principles, agency privacy requirements for non-criminal justice applicants. Non-criminal justice applicants. Most often they have this for secure job positions, such as teachers. I believe Joyce had to give a fingerprint when she had to be a teacher. No? She's shaking her head no. Nowadays, in current times, the teachers and such have to give fingerprints. Your hospital employees, they give fingerprints as non-criminal justice applicants. Okay. Guiding principles, non-criminal justice applicants' privacy rights. Identification verification program. It's for an identification verification program. And if you become a victim of a crime and they can identify you through fingerprints, they can do so. They don't need the legal name and number to identify a record. Okay? So it's a very valid system for such purposes. However, what we find out is that it's from the FBI and it goes to certain criminal actions and is very rarely seen from its non-criminal justice aspect. Just want to point that out. Back in the day, I used to do sales and marketing. One of the programs I did was a school identification program where we made up sets of cards for 5 area towns for their students for different classes. And it ended up being just like a sports card collection. They could all trade their cards with each other. They could order a bundle of them, and just like Valentine cards, when kids send out Valentines, they get a bunch of them, they send them out to everybody. Same thing. So there is a non-criminal use for such items like that, so that we can identify each other in such situations. But to use them in a administrative process against those that they're supposed to be benefiting is egregious, and it needs to stop. The next one I have is the Traveler Redress Inquiry Program, and most people might get confused about this because it talks about the TSA and airport hubs and stuff, but it's any transportation hub. Any transportation hub. And transportation as it goes in the transportation code is under commerce definition. The definition of commerce. Commerce means traffic, transportation, or trade. So transportation is commerce, traffic, or trade. So the transportation hub is any commercial hub. So when you pay taxes to have your kids go to those public schools, the taxes that you pay are a commercial hub. Okay? The Traveler Redress Inquiry Program is a program that a friend of mine getting caught up with the world passport, and they didn't want to allow it. They had allowed it several times, crisscross the country several times with that world passport. Ended up in a place where one of the agents didn't like it, decided they weren't going to let her pass through, took the passport. She had to have this big wig ding with the Department of Defense and Homeland Security. Because that's where this comes from, is the Homeland Security. See it up here in the top left hand. This is Homeland Security. Department of Homeland Security is who you redress your grievances with. Why would you redress the grievances with them? Because freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. And to form a more perfect union under the Constitution of the United States, every last one of us was born here. They are the foreigners. We don't have to pay for shit under a public trust like that. Now, granted, I'm not saying go out there and be lazy and just take advantage of everything. You've got a potential. You need to use it, of course. But remember, you're the creditor. You're the lender under the nations. How are they going to operate if you don't lend them? So, yeah, you can be a benefactor and take benefit of certain things, but you have to lend too. It's a circulatory system. In order for it to come back to you, you have to put it out. Learn this. Forgot to move my page, but this is Traveler Redress Inquiry Program called TRIP. Have a nice trip. See you next fall. Homeland Security with the white or with the pink ribbon up here for breast cancer. The next one, we're going to Investopedia. Investopedia. Financial forensics, meaning certification. Examples. Financial forensics is a field that combines criminal investigation skills with financial auditing skills to identify criminal financial activity coming from within or outside of an organization. Remember the data elements, folks. The data elements are the numbers and other identifiers. Financial forensics may be used in prevention, detection, and recovery activities to investigate terrorism and other criminal activity, provide oversight to private sector and government organizations, and assess organizations' vulnerability to fraudulent activities. Have you assessed your vulnerability to fraudulent activities? Have you had somebody else assess them? I'm telling you myself, I've already made the assessment. I'm telling you what those assessments are. And that if you don't question them, you're the one that's allowing for that fraudulent activity to continue. You're the one that remains involved in that fraudulent activity. It is fraudulent if you are not a resident. And I know 99% of you are not residents. It only takes 1/100th of a body to run the other 100. Get over yourself. In the world of investments, financial forensics experts look for companies to short or to try and win whistleblower awards. So, if you are the whistleblower, you are the one that found the error. You need to blow that whistle, even if you have to blow it to a forensic auditor, a forensic accountant, so they can do the actual forensic security audit. If you find errors otherwise, you need to bring them up. You need to bring them up to somebody that can do a proper investigation. Financial forensics is a field that combines criminal investigation skills with financial auditing to uncover criminal activities carried out by individuals or companies. Hold on, folks. I got to take care of my kid here. Okay, I'm back. So, financial forensics is used in the prevention, detection, and recovery related to criminal activities, such as money laundering, tax fraud, terrorism, and financial schemes. And like I said, I've never once given anything but the legal name. And somehow on the other side of that counter down at the courthouse, every last one of those cases, they converted the legal name to a firm name, and the Social Security number that they had on file, they converted that to an obligor number. I never had any knowledge of that. And had I had knowledge of that, I would have done one of two things. Said, sorry, I'm not competent, or stepped into the shoes as the investor and collected on my investment. To become certified in financial forensics, an individual must be certified public accountant, pass the certified financial forensics exam, and meet certain requirements. Certain and certified. Certain and certified. Anytime there are certain requirements, there must be certifications. So the certain requirements for enumeration at birth meant certain certifications had to be met, and those certain certifications are not met. Financial forensics is also used by investors and traders to find investment opportunities. In other words, they will forensically audit documentation to find out through statistical elements where they can open up a door to allow more people to come in, such as by making a new classification known as transgender or civil rights or feminine rights. Those are just portals to allowing more people in on the fraud without them knowing it. Dig your heels in deeper is what they want you to do. Financial forensics is similar to forensic accounting, which utilizes accounting, auditing, and investigative skills to analyze a company's financial statements for possible fraud in conjunction with anticipated or ongoing legal action. So the financial forensics, I can have it done on those cases. As a matter of correcting record, it will be done by going back to the forensic accounting and not making any accusations, but just utilizing the investigative skills to recover what I sold off. Leviticus 25, verse 25, if one of your brothers, waxen and poor, have sold off his belongings, and one of his kin come to buy them back, he shall redeem them. I am that next of kin to the legal name. I'm here to buy it back. Forensic accountants analyze the financial statements of companies and individuals to look for tax fraud, money laundering, insider trading, scams, market manipulation, and other financial crimes known as unlawful conversions. The goal is to discover these crimes, report them, prevent them if possible, and prosecute the individuals responsible. I'm not here to prosecute anybody, but I am here to discover them, disclose them, and prevent them. I'm telling you, folks, do not give that information. Do not sign them documents unless you're doing so in the proper capacity and letting that be known. I'm not here as an investment. I'm not here as a contract officer. It's a trust. You're a public servant in the public trust that I'm a benefactor to. The facts that I give you are for the beneficiary's record, and that's it. They are not Miranda rights to be used against me in a court of law. I do not belong in those courts of law. I am not under your administration. I am the benefactor to them that allows you to be sitting on the other side of that counter. For if it not been for me, you wouldn't have anything to do. If financial theft has taken place, financial forensics is also used to recover any stolen funds. Theft by way of taking. Theft by way of taking by duress. Threatening any mom in a hospital that she has to sign that document or they're not going to let her take her kid home. That's theft by way of taking. Financial forensics is significantly used by intelligence agencies as well, such as the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Remember that Interstate Identification Index? That's what it's all about. That's the FBI and Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, to uncover terrorism. And notice that's FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation. And you have a State Bureau of Investigation. These are the go-betweens, and they are investigating the investment that mom invested in when she was the informant and entered data elements into the Bureau of Vital Statistics at the lowest level. And they are meant to enter into the National Archives, which is a record system of the International Bureau. As terrorist groups need funding to exist, this is a very effective measure in discovering terrorist cells. So it would be presumed that the opposite would be true, that if you don't have funds, then you're probably not a terrorist. If you're the one that they deem as poor and don't have any of their financial instruments or collected a bunch of their financial assets as the property is held in ownership of the state through a foreign custodian or foreign property custodian, then you probably are not deemed a terrorist. Forensic accountants can be employed by companies, the government, and agencies like the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Internal Revenue Service. Forensic accountants can also help companies design accounting and auditing systems to manage, identify, and reduce risk. Why do that when they can just transfer the insurance underwriting risk to you and then profit off of the liability that they placed on you? That's the problem with the system. This has become increasingly popular as companies are looking for ways to prevent crime before it happens rather than discovered after the fact. This relates to Enron. If you've got some people that are in the system, in the company, and they all of a sudden discover something that's company is taking advantage of all their customers, and it's going to be a liability that's going to put them out of business, it would be wise to open up the mouth and fix it before it gets to that point. And you do that by standing in honor and faith and going to the investors about that. But to hide it from the investors and the public, it does nothing but make you look more like a fraud that you are. How to become certified in financial forensics. And the reason I'm going over this is because I'm trying to help people comprehend. You do not have to be a CPA or have the CFF exam in order to know that there's something going wrong and look at it yourself. There's a certain level of reading that you can obtain that you can use to look at these documents and see some of the fraud for yourself just in the words. That's why I urge everybody to get back and get to a concise English handbook and learn what's really happening right before your eyes. It's in the writing. An individual wishing to become a forensic accountant must first be a certified public accountant. They would then need to take and pass the Certified Financial Forensics exam offered by the American Institute for Certified Public Accountants to be certified accountant in the field of financial forensics. Interesting. How long does it take to be a certified public accountant? I think we're going to find out. The exam focuses on two areas: core forensic knowledge and specialized forensic knowledge. It is offered year-round and has either a pass or fail score. After passing the exam, an individual must complete the CFF credential application. This comes with requirements which include having a minimum of 1,000 business hours experience in forensic accounting within the 5 years prior to completing the CFF application, and 75 hours of forensic accounting related continuing professional development also within 5 years of completing the application. So I want to ask every judge, magistrate, and such sitting on that bench if they've got such experience, because if they don't, and they're ones pushing the order, and the clerk, who better be a certified public accountant, is then issuing them, maybe it's both are in conjunction, because it's a certified public accountant known as the court clerk that should very damn well know what the hell is going on. You see where I'm getting, folks? We all full-grown boys and girls now. And there's supposed to be a neutral and independent office within the United States Postal Service, comprising of the judicial officer, the administrative law judge, and the Postal Service Board of Contract Appeals. Do you see which account I'm questioning now? I don't give a fuck about your account. I don't give a fuck about the Social Security account. I want that postal account. That's the one that's tied to the general ledger. And it has certain information in there that's got my name and a number in there that has been converted, translated, and otherwise. I want it all back. Two forensic experts made their names exposing two of the largest frauds in history. Jim Chanos, noted short seller at the helm of hedge fund Nikos Associates, dug into the financial statements and other filings of Enron Corporation and uncovered irregularities regarding mark-to-market practices of its energy derivatives and violations of generally accepted accounting principles on matching policy in the company's merchant banking operations. See, when it's all said and done, as far as the investments are concerned, I do have a merchant trust account with the post office, all sitting there tidy and waiting for the funds to be deposited upon correction. Enron eventually imploded, delivering a tidy sum to Chanos Fund. Harry Markopoulos, an obscure securities professional in the early 2000s, attempted for several years to warn the Securities Exchange Commission and others about the Ponzi scheme perpetrated by Bernie Madoff. And then almost a decade later, they finally caught up with him, and he wrote his book and put it out, and people just loved it. But they let him continue on in business for almost a decade before they shut him down. And this guy was screaming at the top of his voice, look what's going on, look what's going on, look what's going on. I've been screaming at the top of my voice for 7 years now. Look what's going on. Look what's going on. Look, when the fuck are you going to start listening? You're going to wait for the news media to put it out and wait for the courts to go down? Then it's too late. You done already went to court and got arrested, thrown in jail. The next one, financial statements. List of types. How to read them. List of types and how to read them. Remember, folks, it only has certain information on there, and there's additional information that needs to be exposed to certain individuals for those corrections that imply that you're some kind of contract officer. Financial statements are written records that convey the business activities and the financial performance of a company. Financial statements are often audited by government agencies, accountants, firms, etc., to ensure accuracy. If there's one error, you can call the whole record into question. That's the only thing you need. Find one error, and it pauses the possibility that there might be others. So we need to investigate the entire record. Don't you get it? What does a teacher do when she does a report on a writing? Does she stop after she finds the first error? No. She continues on, she reads the whole thing and gives you an audited inventory of what the errors are. Financing or investing purposes. For profit, primary financial statements include the balance sheet, income statement, statement of cash flow, and statements of changes in equity. I'm sorry, but the only one that can have equity is the true investor. So the only change in equity can be the amount. See what I'm getting at, folks? This is the undisclosed value in those statements. The change, it's a change in equity. It's the value. As you put into that system, you increase its value. That changes, but that equity is yours. Just like the homeowners. When you make those payments, you're establishing equity in that home because you're the only one that is giving consideration, while the others are taking tax payments and insurance payments, and those are all credit default swaps. They have not paid in any equity. It's all a false title, claiming that you're conducting business. You gave them an address, a name and address, a principal place of business, known as your residence. And you're doing all of that paperwork. It's theirs. The benefactor is not required to do anything. Give them the data elements, the numbers and other identifiers they need. They can fill out the paperwork. They can put the signatures on there. And if they want your signature, you put it at the very top of the document and put a date next to it. Do not sign on the dotted line. If you're going to sign anything, for crying out loud, do it at the top and put a date in. Make sure and clearly and distinctly let them know you're not the contracting officer. You are not qualified. You can only partake in the public service that they are providing as a member of the public trust known as the benefactor. Financial statements are written records that convey the business activities and the financial performance of an entity. The written record, it is not an electronic record. They cannot do everything electronic. They have to have the financial statements as a matter of written record. And what is a financial statement as a written record? Is a cash item. They cannot get rid of the fiat paper currency, as cash items are required. The balance sheet provides an overview of assets, liabilities, and shareholders' equity as a snapshot in time. The income statement primarily focuses on a company's revenue and expenses during a particular period. Did mom have a revenue and expenses during a particular period? Does the child, when they're at school, have a particular revenue and expenses during a particular period? How are they related to that income statement? How is it income if you don't have anything to invest? See, it takes an investment to have an income. And that means you have to take somebody else's monetary system and put it to use for the investment. Once expenses are subtracted from revenues, the statement produces a company's profit figure called net income. So when you get that check, and that check is in the all caps name or something, and then they got your name on it, and it says net income or gross income. IRS wants to know your net income, right? You're the one saying that you're a company. You don't recognize that? Only companies can have a net income. Okay? Otherwise, it would have said the statement produces a company or individual's profit figure called net income. It didn't say that. It doesn't include the individual. Cash flow statement measures how well a company generates cash to pay its debt obligations, fund its operating expenses, and fund investments. Only companies can invest. You have to be a corporate entity with a proper identification so that they can track you down. The statement of changes in equity records records how profits are retained within a company for future growth or distributed to external parties. See, the legal name is a descriptor of a company, and they're treating you as a company, when in fact you're an external party. You are not the individual. You are an external party to the contract, to the investment contract, as the benefactor in the trust. And that stuff is never supposed to have been taken from you. Never. Investors and financial analysts rely on financial data. Remember them data elements? Remember them data elements? I got to read this comment from Brielle real quick in regards to those data elements, because one of those data elements I let the midwife take the blood heel prick of my firstborn. I had it destroyed when I found out they keep it for 7 years and got caught using the DNA. Think about that, folks. The data elements that you give in every form are very important. A fingerprint, that's a data element. It doesn't have to be in the form of symbolized data. It can be engraven data. Investors and financial analysts rely on financial data to analyze the performance of a company and make predictions about the future direction of the company's stock price, the equity. Is it going to raise or fall, raise or fall? One of the most important resources of reliable and audited financial data is the annual report, which contains the firm's financial statements. If they're considering me a firm, I've never given such financial statements. I've never made one financial statement in those courts as according to a firm's financial statements, knowing that that's what the connection was. Had I known that that was the connection, I'd been able to attest that I'm not a firm. I'm not organized under the laws of the United States. I've never conducted business as such. I've never received payments or made payments to anybody else for any kind of inventory, products, goods, or services, or anything along those lines. None. The financial statements are used by investors, market analysts, and creditors to evaluate a company's financial health and earnings potential. Financial health and earnings potential. Three major financial statement reports are the balance sheet, income statement, and statement of cash flows. Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about. We're going to get back to that child because we have the Iowa Department of Education early access. Every state's got this. Every state has an early access. What is the early access about, folks? What do you think early access is about in regards to the Social Security and all of this stuff going on with contracts? Well, like I said, under 5 USC 552A, maintaining records on individuals, this is part of that record. This is when that record becomes public, when you send your children to the public education system and they teach that child how to write the legal name. They don't teach that child about the given name and the family name. They teach that child about the first name and last name, and they teach them how to write the first name and last name. Never once telling anybody the difference between the legal name and its use and the use of the given name by itself without any other identifiers and how important that is. Early access is Iowa's system for providing early intervention services. Folks, you already provided them the intervention when you signed them up for the birth through registration. That's an intervention program. It's for people that don't know how to take care of their children. The state can then step in and provide care for them through the financial documentation. And if you don't think I'm well aware of foster care and orphanages and how it works, you might be a little wrong. See, intervention services works the opposite way as well. In those intervention services, you have people that are willing to foster children that are under intervention, and they make good money doing it. But if that child is a wild child and doesn't like to listen to the rules, they just simply get rid of them in the next 3, 4, 6 months and ship them off to another home because they want easy money. They don't want to have to learn how to discipline children and raise them properly. That's too much work. It is available to infants and toddlers from birth to age 3 years. Iowa Department of Education. Early access is Iowa's system for providing early intervention services. It is available to infants and toddlers from birth to age 3 years, then what does it have to do with the education system if those children don't even go to school until they are 5? Who have a health or physical condition that may affect his or her growth and development, have developmental delays in his or her ability to play, think, talk, or move. The first 3 years of a child's life are the most important when setting the foundation for ongoing development. Starting supports and services early improves a child's ability to develop and learn. Bullshit. Bullshit. The supports and services provided are taking away from the child's spiritual development and is a detriment. That is my sincere, deep-seated belief and opinion. I firmly believe that if children are allowed to develop talents spiritually, as most will naturally strive as hard as they can towards their natural talents, then the further education will come automatically because of their very own motivation to do as best they can in their very own talent. The focus of early access is to support parents to help their children learn and grow throughout their everyday activities and routines. If the focus of early access is to support parents to help their children learn and grow throughout their everyday activities and routines, then why is it they're being told that they have to turn around and send them to school so somebody else can now teach them how to learn and grow? I thought the focus here is to support parents to help their children learn and grow, not teachers. So I still don't see the relation to public education yet. This means early access service providers work with parents and other caregivers to help their children develop to their fullest potential. Again, I disagree. I believe by allowing a child to develop his full potential in talents first, the motivation to learn all the rest of the BS will come. How do young children learn? Children learn by doing the activities and routines that your caregivers and other children around them do all day long, such as having snack, bath time, getting dressed, and going in the car. No, I don't agree so. Those are not the things that they need to be learning. That's the way it's set up, but that is not what they should be learning. They should be learning the culture and their talents and the way their mom and dad care for them. And moms and dads, you don't need to worry about the neighbors and how they bring their children up. Worry about your own. Children learn how to participate with their families and others in their daily routines and activities. And so when you send them off to school to spend half the day over at the school, they're learning how to participate with people that are teaching them all kinds of things that they shouldn't know, that you don't want them to know. They're teaching them biases and all kinds of ideologies that really aren't so well off if you really want to take care of your own, if they're off teaching your children different ideologies than your own. That's where the problem comes in. The children come home and start fighting with mom and dad because they're learning new ideologies that aren't brought about at home. Now mom and dad have to fight ideologies with a damn 6-year-old child. It's pathetic. Iowa's area education agencies are responsible for administration of early access across the state. Again, if early administration is the infant to 3-year-old and they don't enter school until 5, why is it the early education or the education system is the administrating agency? I have serious questions. So I look into it and I find the state systems of early childhood intervention, developing a state comprehensive systems of personnel development. And I'll be damned if these children aren't being trained to be personnel, just as it says. A system designed to address the challenges faced in the early childhood workforce. They're training your children for the workforce, nothing more and nothing less. Notice it says nothing else. It's a system designed to address the challenges faced in the early childhood workforce, including shortages of personnel. They are determining how many personnel they need now, and depending upon the birth certificate or birth statistics to do so. Need for additional training at both the pre-service and in-service levels. Inconsistent alignment of state and national competencies and standards. Challenges faced by EC personnel due to the diverse needs of young children and their families. Inequities of preparation and compensation among those providing services. See, these early childhood workforce people, they're raising them up to be just like them, because someday little Johnny's going to be a firefighter. Someday little Sarah's going to be a school teacher. Someday, by God, little Jeffrey's going to be a judge, and I'll be damned if DeAndre over there ain't one day going to be a president. Every last one of them part of the federal workforce. Federal government means all entities of the government of the United States. The United States is the corporate entity, and that's who all these organizations have to be organized under. They have to be organized under the laws of the United States as commercial entities in the Interstate Identification Index. And then here in Iowa, we have the Iowa Department of Human Services, Iowa Medicaid Memorandum of Understanding for value-based purchasing support activities. So these early education supports for mom and dad are value-based purchase systems. And you're providing support activities through personal services to do the paperwork. Well, I don't know about you guys, but this is the stuff that I research that makes me want to do something about it. So I get up and I do something about it. I'm putting it out there for you guys so you might be able to get up and do something about it. But that's up to you. If you really want to save your children from that system, I urge you to get up and do something about it now. It all comes down to those competencies that you get in that very education system. They taught you how to read. They taught you how to remember. But that's about it. They didn't teach you how to think for yourself. They didn't teach you about your intuition. They didn't teach you about instincts. They didn't teach you about natural law and her God. They didn't teach you nothing except to remember the data elements and how to put them in a certain order for them. and then you went through life and never certified anything. Mom and dad didn't either. They're on the other side of that table certifying things, but that's not equal consideration. There has to be a statement of intent from both parties agreeing, or a statement of intent signed by both parties, a handwritten statement of intent signed by both parties. If that doesn't exist, then it's not properly certified. And that forensic audit will show that. So if you find no handwritten statement of intent to transfer an asset for collateral use as a credit device, it didn't happen. And their record is totally in error from the day you were born. Hope you guys understand that. I'm done for the night. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And in the meantime, remember, I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back or not. So may God bless you. Have a good night. We'll see you next time. Bye now.